Dear Diary, today I took the first step in becoming an ADHD coach. I can't actually quite believe it. I want to learn, grow, and build something extraordinary. I think this journey will be the Indigo Diaries.
Dear Diary, welcome world to the Indigo Diaries, and welcome to our exciting new series, Series 2, The World Through a Trainee's Coach's Eyes. And that coaching training is me, Tasha Hickling. The Indigo Diaries is a podcast for those who want to learn about ADHD through others' experiences. So welcome back, everyone. And this week, I'm actually back after 1 week, okay? So I thought I was going to be doing this every 2 weeks, but I've got a few days off work, so I decided to do it now. And I'm so close. I just want to share this with everyone before we get started. I'm so close to the end of this part on my course. This is the second part of my course before we get into the actual coaching, like basics and the coaching, like competencies and all this. And I'm so excited. Like, I'm getting really impatient. I can feel myself like, come on. I'm just ready to get full on started and get thrown in with my coaching. And I've made a massive, huge life decision over the past week, which I'm really excited to share with you in a few weeks, about my coaching career and moving forward with my full-time job here and things like that. So yeah, it's been a bit of a real kind of a bit of an eye-opener change week this week. And that's funny because today we're talking about barriers and obstacles and stories that we create in our minds. And the barrier and obstacles has been a huge one for me because we're going to be starting to talk about change. So rather than me keep going on, let me get started, hey? So change is scary, messy, and inevitable. But the only way to the other side of change is through. And when we go on these journeys, okay, to get through on a journey, we have to be courageous to be out of our comfort zone. Any change that you create in your life, you go out of your comfort zone, because when you're in your life, you create this comfort of, this is my life, this is what I do, and it's this, safe. Something changes, you've got to go onto a different road, a different way. It's going to be out of your comfort zone. So it takes a lot of courage to do that. And I just wanted to share that with you first, because I think when we go on these things, we don't really think about how much we actually have to adapt to different scenarios and situations. And when we're going on this journey, you know, there are a lot of barriers and obstacles kind of acting like a brick wall that get in the way. So we're walking down the street, right, we get to that signpost, which way we're going to go, right, change is this way, comfort zone is this way. We've firstly got to choose to go down that road of not being in our comfort zone. You go down that road and boom, there's a brick wall. And, you know, different things get in the way, and there's a lot, and that wall, when you have ADHD, is very thick and very tall. And there are many different barriers and obstacles that go along with change, especially when it comes with ADHD. And we're going to start talking about those examples now. And one of the big ones is awareness, self-awareness. You know, we go through each day without even thinking or looking around at things that we're doing. And, you know, a lot of people become so busy and so wrapped up in their own lives that we become human doings, not human beings. We don't just simply be, we do things. We got to get things done. We got to do this. We got to do this. We got to do this. But what about our name? We're called human beings for a reason. And I find that a lot of people, I know with myself, we don't just be. And that awareness of looking around and really being able to change. It's that, you know, what we talked about a few weeks ago with pre-contemplation and contemplation, the 5 stages of change. And you've got to be able to really, you know, contemplate the change. And that all starts with self-awareness. And that is probably one of the biggest barriers. If you are not aware that all these things are barriers and you want to change, then how are you going to create that? And I think that that's one of the biggest barriers for people with ADHD is, you know, there's been a lot of research to say that ADHD really affects our self-awareness, our awareness because we just get into this mood of do. Society does that. But when we have ADHD, it is really hard to, because of the executive functions, to have that self-awareness. The next one, so the first one is awareness. The next one is time blindness. So it's the awareness of time and estimations in our own world. And this is one of the biggest barriers that I hear is, we're not, we hyper-focus for 10, 20 minutes and we think, oh, we've got 20 minutes and it turns into about 3 hours. And then we don't realize we've got to get somewhere. We go, oh, we need to be somewhere at 9 o'clock. So we leave it 9:45, 8:45. Not realizing we've got to get in a car, get the bags, get this. We don't estimate that time. We don't think, oh, there could be traffic this morning. There could be this. So we get there late. And 9 out of 10, I can tell you, a lot of people have thought about it and have really wanted to get there on time, but the estimation is just not there for us. They say that we should estimate. A good technique for people with ADHD is to estimate 3 times more time than you actually need in order for you to get to places on time. So that one's a real big one. The third one is lack of support. And this one really highlights, especially where I am in the world and with my experiences, this one seems to be one of the biggest. And that's things like resources. Are there resources available where you live to get help, proper help for your ADHD? Do you have the right people in your life that are there to support you with the change, or are they a barrier in themselves? It's going, no, don't change, which acts as a barrier. Do you have the right help? Is there the right psychiatrist, meds, coaches? Do you have that? Do we have the money for that? They're expensive. Do we have boundaries in place that stop us from doing everything that everybody else wants and do what we want? And I think that lack of support, we can work with clients and we can work with people, but as soon as they step away from us and everything else, if there's no actual external supports there, then it all falls apart. And I think that's one of the biggest ones that I feel that a lot of people really struggle with and maybe not aware of that. It really can make the biggest difference when you have the right people in your life, and it can make more of a difference than you may believe. So number 4 is when things get difficult. And, I'll put this below. It's a really good resource about your comfort zone circle. You're in your comfort zone and then you go through, and then you've got to go to that awful zone of like fear, uncomfortable, difficult. This is not working. Oh no, it's not working. So a lot of people do is they go, no, I'm not going to carry on anymore. And then they go back to the comfort zone rather than pushing on. And when you get there to the other side, it becomes that learning zone when you can learn and you build, and then you can see the impacts of it and it becomes your new comfort zone. But going out of your comfort zone to get to the other part is where a lot of people go, no, I'm not doing it anymore. When things get difficult, it can really stop people from growing any further because they don't want to push themselves out of that. And, we go back to our default mode network. We go back to what we've always known. And then the 5th one is distractions and boredom. And this is a huge one. Like, it could be a distraction for the shiny new things. I mean, I know that I do that 100%. Last weekend, I'm going to share this random story. That last weekend, I was doing loads of work and then I bought a new chair. I bought a game chair. I'm sat in it right now. It's very comfortable. And I had to stop what I was doing because it came and I couldn't just leave it in the box. No, I had to put it together there and then everything else just got lost. And then after I'd finished the chair, I realised, oh my goodness, apologies. And I realized that I actually needed to do all that other stuff that was more important. I needed to do that now. And that chair could have waited. And then boredom, loss of motivation, not stimulating anymore. When things become very boring. And that's a huge one. Boredom, people don't realize that people with ADHD, boredom is like pain. It can be really painful. I know, like with me, when I've been in lockdown, it's painful to not have those stimulating things. The next one is limiting beliefs. And we talked about this last time, about the beliefs that we've grown up with, the beliefs of, our inner critics, the beliefs of the doubt, and all that could really, really, if you don't believe it, then how can you achieve it? Oh, that's a little nice metaphor there. But if you can't believe it, then how can you achieve it? It's, that thing that's stopping you. It is a barrier. Another one is fear. And there is different types of fear, the fear of the unknown, the fear of loss, imposter syndrome, when we don't feel that we almost don't deserve it. We're like an imposter where we are. And I think that, all those ones that I've just mentioned are examples of, especially for people with ADHD, of what can be barriers. But like we always say, is every person with ADHD is very unique and will have their unique barriers. For me, time blindness is a big one, but not really. I would say some of my own barriers have been my awareness, things getting difficult, boredom, and limiting beliefs and fear. But fear has probably been one of the biggest ones for me. And I think it depends. But what I think that one of the hardest things is the unexpected barriers on our journey of change can be the worst. When we think, yes, we're doing this, we're coming out of our comfort zone, we're creating change, it's going, we're boom, a barrier. Boom, oh, look, new shiny toy. Boom, I don't know, we don't get there on time. Boom, something else, it becomes too difficult. Boom, someone puts another layer of change in, and we're just like, life is hard. Life throws us all the time. We think we have a plan, we're changing, we're creating these change, we think we know it all. We try and be as proactive as we can, and then boom. And those unexpected barriers can really be hard, and it's about trying to prepare for them. So they asked us to discuss a change that I went through and what were the barriers, and then which ones resonate with you and how did you manage to get through. So a change that I went through quite recently, that I'm kind of still going through, is asking for help. Okay. So a change that I really wanted to do in my life was asking for help and creating the best life for myself by asking for help. And one of the barriers with me was I wasn't aware of when I needed help. I just kept going boom, boom, boom. And I was tolerating a lot more in my life and not actually realizing what I needed. And what I needed, in order to get what I needed people to help me. And, one of my limiting beliefs, which was one of the biggest things, which is my barrier, was, so I'm going on this road and I'm going, right, I need to ask for help. So I decided to go on asking for help or do it all by yourself. So I'm going down the asking for help road, and boom, limiting belief. My limiting belief is get on with it, do it yourself, and shy away. I've always been kind of told to just get on with it. Just get on with it. You don't need help. Just get on with it yourself. And that really stopped me from moving any forward, because it was like a huge brick wall. Well, I can't ask for help. So it makes you kind of want to turn around and go down that other road. But I realized that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. Asking for help is courageous and strong. And then, boom, when I kind of got over that, it was like, boom, awareness. I used to be a human doing. I wasn't being. I'd go through my day and realize, actually, by the end of the day, I was so tired because I didn't have all this stuff that I needed. And so I started we talked about this a while ago, about hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And now every morning I go through my hierarchy of needs to make sure I'm getting what I need. And if I'm not, and it actually has been invoking my awareness throughout the day, if my back's hurting, I'm going, I'm not getting what I need. Okay, so I need to go and ask for help. And it's actually helping, and it making me more aware throughout my day. Another one was lack of support. And the lack of support where I was, and that I wasn't using what I had. It was there, I just wasn't using it, and I wasn't telling people what I needed. So how were people meant to know? I didn't look for resources where I was in the world. I didn't have the boundaries. So I think for me, the three were the awareness, the lack of support, and the limiting beliefs. And for me, the things that helped me realize it was understanding why I needed help. Why did I need help? And I needed help. And changing changing the perspective rather than going, I need help because this is not, oh, it's a barrier, blah, blah, blah. Going, looking at the possibility rather than, yeah, this is really hard and I need help with this. How can I make this better? What is the possibility? How can I learn from this? And I think that that's really, really what has helped me get through. And these are hard things, and these obstacles are one of the biggest things. But I think one of the biggest, the biggest thing that has helped me is focusing on the positives and strengths rather than the barriers. I always used to just see barriers in my life, weaknesses in my life. And when I've started to look at my strengths and look at that, and the more of the positive side of my life, it actually makes me realize, and it makes me look at that first. So when I come up with barriers, like fear, like lack of support, I go, right, what do I have that I can use to help with this barrier? Looking at myself and my life as a resource, what do I have to help with this? So for instance, asking for help, I actually had a lot of people in my life, a lack of support that would help me. I just had to ask. And my limiting belief was stopping me access the support I had. So it wasn't a lack of support, it was just the belief. When I changed that belief and that perspective and thought, what do I have rather than what don't I have? It really helped me. So I think for me, it was looking at the possibility, not the problem. So it's that thing of, it's like a kind of like a pendulum swing. You know, a lot of people, we focus on the negative, we focus on the kind of the negative positive, the negative illusionary bias. We look at the negative side of ADHD. And then some people look at that too positive, ADHD is this, oh my gosh. And it's, yeah, we need to use that positive, those strengths to get through the barriers. But in retrospect, if we look at the strengths, they are far greater than the barriers. Let's think of the barriers as a brick wall. The strength, the strength, your strength and who you are is the big hammer that's going to knock that down. And when you see it like that, it's the strengths are far greater. Yeah, we need to recognize the negative and the barriers, because if we don't, then we're not going to get through them. But how do we get through them? Using our strengths. It's just if you're willing to see that you've got strengths to get over those barriers. And this kind of links into stories we tell ourselves and the most dominant thoughts, are the most dominant negative or positive? And we're going to talk about the stories after the break. So that was the first half, and hope you join us after the break. I've just realized I've gone over time, but oh well, that was a big one. And there's a lot of barriers and changes in our lives. And I just want you to know that they were only a few examples of hundreds. And your own barriers in your life are unique to you, because not one person with ADHD is ever going to be the same. We're all unique. We have our own unique barriers. But realizing that sometimes we do have things in common. So join us after the break when we'll discuss the stories of our minds. And we're out.
If you would like any information on Indigo's support group, check out the website below for our link to our Facebook page, or email at indigo.adhd2020@gmail.com. If you would like to offer any comments or feedback, or if you are interested in the world hearing your story, then please reach out, either through the group or through our email. As said before, have a good week. Check in again later, Indigos. Shh, the Indigo Diaries.
We're back. And before the break, we were talking about the obstacles in our lives, and it's quite a negative kind of respect. And now we're going to be starting to talk about the stories that we tell ourselves. What, stories like a book? Nah, these are not stories of the book. These are stories of our mind. So I'm just going to share like a little kind of riddle kind of novel with you that I've kind of been working on. So we go through our lives and we have an angel and a devil in our ears, on our shoulders. You've probably heard this analogy before. And the angel is obviously feeding you these positive stories about life, about your life, and they see your life and your experiences in different ways. The angel sees it in a very positive, nice, cushiony way. A devil obviously is the opposite of that. He sees it in a very negative light, very, very, very challenging, thinks the worst. And which one wins? The one you feed is the one that wins. The thoughts and the emotions and the stories that you feed is the one that wins. So if you believe the angel, that wins. If you believe a devil, that wins. If your emotions and your thoughts and then the stories that you create from different situations are like the angel, then that wins. If it's like the devil, then that wins. And, our brain creates stories based on our experiences to make sense of our world. Humans are basically storytellers in our minds. We create these stories from what happens in our world to kind of make sense of what's going on in our brain. And that's what happens. And Paul Zak, this is a really cool resource, I'll put it below. He says that, storytelling releases different neurotransmitters in our brain, and it triggers our human brain's ability to connect and make meaning. So the transmitters in our brains, basically like dopamine, oxytocin, it triggers them to connect and make meaning to things. So we interpret the world in our own way. And I think that's really interesting that our brain, it's, we talk about our mind and with ADHD, a lot of people, they talk about what happens on the external side, but what happens between the ears is really important in our minds. And that, it's part of our brain wiring to make stories. It's part of our brain wiring to be biased, to make implicit biased opinions and things. So the question is, and I think this is a really good question, and I have my own experience with this, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, is what's fact and what's story? With all the conclusions, assumptions in our lives that we make, our brain makes, because we have to make sense of what's going on, it's hard to see what is a fact and what's story. And, what happens between those is a very much huge part of our lives. I don't think it's talked about enough. And, the fact that we create these stories, and it is part of our neurotransmitters, that it is hard to really realize the difference. So they asked, what is one of your stories and does it serve you? And so one of the things that I've been working on this year with my coach is what's fact and what's story. So for instance, a story that I created a while ago was, someone was a little bit rude to me a while ago, and I blame myself. And I interpreted from the situation that she was mad at me because I did something wrong. And I made this story up that I was in the wrong, I did this, and this, not realizing that she'd actually had a really bad day and was taking all her anger out on me, and it had absolutely nothing to do with me. And I created this story and I was really upset about it. And I jumped to a conclusion because my brain had to make sense of why she was being very rude to me. I couldn't just sit there and go, oh, she was rude. And, rejection sensitivity there came right in. And this story came up in my mind. And my coach said to me, is it a fact or is it a story? And I was like, well, it's a story because the fact is she'd had a hard day and that was not okay to take that out on me. But I created this story that it was about me, but it had nothing to do with me. So was this story serving me? No, it was creating upset and creating false information in my brain that actually has impact on my whole life, has impact on the way my brains function. It has impact on everything. And it wasn't serving me. So I realized that it was a story. And then I distinguished what the facts were. I'm going to talk about this in a bit, is, we usually trust what happens in our brain, but can we trust it? Can we trust these stories that we create? It's not our minds. It's just that we've developed some distortions over the years. That's what we learn about. It's these distortions over the year due to making connections in how we perceive the world. And these mental distortions are called cognitive distortions. And CBT, if anyone knows, that's cognitive behavior therapy, is based on cognitive distortions. And it's, misleading thinking patterns or untrue beliefs that negatively affect our behavior. And when I started to learn about cognitive distortions, I was like, oh my goodness, this makes so much sense. And I've put in a really good resource below to help, because I really think it's fantastic. And some of the ADHD, there's some that are actually specific for ADHD because of the way our brain wiring is, because of a lot of our experiences. We have sometimes have had similar experiences. Some of our ADHD cognitive distortions are things like perfectionism, all or nothing, black and white thinking. I should do this, I must do this. And then labeling ourselves like, I am stupid, I am this, I am that. And it was just when I started to learn about this, I was like, oh my goodness, this is not true. This is because of the experiences I've had and the life that I've had. I've perceived all of these things when in fact it's not true. I don't have to be perfect all the time. Nobody's perfect. I don't need to do things now or it's never going to get done. I don't have to do this. What's this? I should do this. I should do this, but so what? I'm not stupid. I'm not this. I'm not that. I don't need to do everything or I'm not going to do it. And it's creating that shift, and it's really hard. And they say, which ones have you done in the past, or you think that are quite predominant in the ADHD community? And I think that perfectionism and people pleasing is one of the biggest. I think that we create, this story that we have to be perfect, and imposter syndrome comes into play there, that we don't feel that we kind of should be here sometimes, and we don't feel like we should have done that because we know how hard it's been our whole life. So we try to be perfectionism. We create the story that we need to do all these steps in order to get there. And then when we get there, we feel like an imposter because we've done so much more than our peers. And it's our brains from our, it's just our perception from our own experiences. And for me, when I started to learn this it gave me validation and evidence that I don't need to listen to these in my brain. I don't need to listen to these stories that are not serving me. Some stories do serve you. Stories can be facts. They can be truths. Let's say we have an experience, we have experience every day, and we come to the conclusion, and, that's okay. And we know that that's the fact. But do you know it's a fact or a story? Are you aware? That awareness key coming back in here, about the barrier of awareness. Are you aware? And, and there are a lot that are very predominant in the ADHD community, people pleasing, having to do things now. We need to do things now, and we're not going to do it. We've got to do this. We need to do this. We should do this. We must do this. Labeling ourselves because we've been labeled our whole lives. So we believe it is true, when in fact it's not true. We're not too much. That's the biggest one I hear with labeling. We're too this, we're too that. We're not too this, we're not too that. We're just different. But what's normal? So I think that it's a big one, and I've done most of them in the past, and I still do them now. And I think the biggest one for me is perfectionism, and I always had to try and be the best at things. And I've got a saying now, I'm an 80% okay, 20% utter mess. And that helps me with my perfectionism. It's helping me rewrite my story. So how do we rewrite our narrative? How do we rewrite or in a story? How do we distinguish the right story and if it's serving us. And I think one of the biggest thing is distinguishing, is it fact or is it a story? So having those conversations with yourself, a really good CBT model is where it's really cool. I'll put it also below. It's where you look at the event, you think about your thoughts around it, and then your behavior and your feelings. So for instance, the event that I shared earlier was that girl was being very rude to me. The thoughts were, it's my fault. What have I done? I've done something wrong, this and this. And my behavior was, I was upset. I was distraught. I was frozen. I was panicky. I was kept saying, sorry. When I rationalize, and then the step 4 is rationalize it. That's asking if it's fact or if it's story. When I rationalized it, I kept thinking to myself, okay, what actually happened? Did you say anything to her that made her do this? No. So is it your fault? No. And I used to do that with everything. Every scenario that didn't make me feel okay, I would do that with me until it became almost like engraved in my life. And I think that that's probably for me one of the biggest things that helped me rewrite my narrative. Next one is noticing patterns, noticing when things come up. You know, I had this belief that this story that speaking up, I was my opinions didn't matter. My opinions didn't matter, and I really struggle with this and keep everything to myself, and noticing patterns in my life when that's occurred, and knowing that that's a story that I've created from past experiences. My opinion does matter, not in every situation, but my opinion does matter. And if I want to share it, that's okay. So noticing those patterns when they keep coming up and remembering who you are, your strengths. Yeah, these barriers, these stories that we create, we've created them for a reason. And just remembering your strengths, your core values, your character strengths, your performance strengths. We talked about this, and remembering who you are. And I think that's one of the biggest things, because who you are is great. And in order to be able to rewrite your story, those strengths will guide you there. So that's kind of stories and barriers. And next week, we're going to be talking about culture, how ADHD is in different cultures, and goal setting goals. And basically, that's the last week. Next week is the last week of my course, and the last week of this part of the podcast. So in 2 weeks, I'll be putting up kind of a new episode, still in series 2, but it's going to have a different light, because I'm going to be starting getting into my coaching, and it's going to be looking at things and looking at how we can create change in our lives. And I'm excited to kind of take my interpretations of what I've learned and try and use that in order to help people. And it also helps me verbal process. So there's that as well. So I'm very excited. So I'm excited for the future and what's coming up. So my encouragement for this week is probably one of my favorites that I've ever read. And it's from Tony Robbins. And you probably heard that get louder because I had to come in because I couldn't see the writing on my computer. So the encouragement of the week is, we all have our own story, and we stay attached to our story. This can stop us from growing and living. You want to make your life better? Change your story, change your life. And that's easier said than done. But it is very true. You want to create that lasting change. You want to go out of your comfort zone, push through to that other side, that learning, that curiosity. Then it all starts with that foundation of changing what happens between your inner ears. Have a situation, think about it, and think to yourself, is this a fact or is this a story? And go from there. Why not? What you got to lose? Keep thinking, keep being aware, and remember that this is hard. It's not going to be a one night fix all or a one day fix all. It's over time. Change happens over time. And so does growth. Why not make that change a growth rather than just an obstacle in your way? I hope next week you come learn, listen, and experience the world through the eyes of a coach in training. Why not? Have a great week, guys. And keep looking out. Keep being you. And we're out.
Dear Diary, as the training process goes on, it makes me stop and wonder, could there be more for us? More light, more possibilities, and a place where we can truly be ourselves? I think this journey will be... Shh.